Hi, everybody. Uh, so happy to be here. Actually, it was funny when I was asked to put something together. I came up with the title, um, "How I Let My Higher Power Love Me." And anyway, something happened in the translation, and it came out with "How My Higher Power Loves Me," which also works. But in my personal experience, um, I had to learn to let my higher power love me. Um, so I'll talk about that a little bit later. But one of the things that I wanted to go into is I'm not going to spend a lot of time on my story as far as my childhood and all that. I do just want to summarize by saying a lot of you guys have heard that uh, I'm the oldest of six children. My mother was a baby when she had me. She had just turned 21, and then she popped out another kid every 13 months until she was 28. So by the time she was 28, she had six kids, all under the age of 7. And she became a raging alcoholic. My father was a workaholic, so she was a single mom basically with all these little babies. Sundays were his only commitments. So he was a workaholic, a sexaholic, complete and total narcissist, and and then he actually wanted to become a priest. So we were raised in this like really devout Catholic family, which, given all of the uh, proclivities, was kind of, I didn't learn it until my teens, but it seemed very hypocritical to me. So that's the biggest part of that story is there was one family that we portrayed out to the world, and there was another completely different universe inside the windows and doors of our house. Um, and so we learned very early that, putting on a good show was how you survived the world. And I just always believed that everybody had some sort of secret out there. I mean, I remember even when I went to kindergarten, like these kids were different. And I didn't know how to interact with them. I had zero self-esteem. And it was just so ironically, I was raised with this higher power, called God. Um, but now what's fascinating for me as I look back on my childhood, I knew those nuns were wrong, and I got my hands whacked by these nuns on occasion because I just didn't agree with what they were teaching. And back in this day, it was many, many moons ago, they had something called limbo, so that if babies weren't baptized properly, or anybody wasn't baptized properly, they ended up in this weird limbo place, until the next coming. And that's, the first thing I just intuitively knew. I said, Jesus's father would never do that to a baby. So intuitively, I knew something when I was a child, but as I turned that, so in a weird way, Catholicism, or the teachings, if you will, of the nuns saved my butt. On the other hand, they and my parents became my higher power. So what I'm going to talk about today is really my personal journey with my higher power, if you will. And hopefully, and I just pray that we have a lot of time for other people to share their stories. So as a child, my parents, the priests, the nuns, were my higher power. My well-being was determined on how they behaved toward me. My worthiness was based on what they said to me and what they did to me. Therefore, I'm a really smart kid. Logically, my concept of God was based on the same characteristics that these people had, because they were my higher power. So this God being, and I was also taught that man was made in God's image. So if this is how these people loved me, then that must also be how God loves me. And that was my logic at the time. So I had this very critical, judgmental, scorekeeping God, that I had to earn brownie points with, and I had to earn that love. I had to earn my parents' love. I had to earn, love was to be earned. And that was from birth. As a teen, I started to rebel against all of these authority figures, including God, because I then learned what hypocrisy was, and I felt my parents were hypocrites. I felt the church was pretty hypocritical at that time, and I just didn't trust anyone. I didn't trust anyone to help me, especially my family. And so it was, and I had a lot of anger that I didn't realize. I had a lot of anger towards God because of my family situation. And I do remember that when I was a teen, young teen, I was really starting about 12, I used to talk to God in the mirror all the time. And I found out many years later that this was actually a thing in the counseling world. But I used to talk to God, and I would tell him how pissed I was, and that he better do something about this friggin' family situation because it was too much for me. And he was giving me way too much responsibility. And he better do something really good for me. I used to demand that. Someday you're going to pay me back for like all this drama and whatever that I was going through. And so that was my relationship kind of as a teen. As a young adult, my self-image and my self-esteem were founded in my independence. That was it. I needed to portray the altogether look to the world in order to protect myself. That was my shield of armor. I could go home and kind of fall apart or whatever, but there was this persona that I was out in the world. And there's a famous quote by Cary Grant, who was actually named Archibald something, his real name. And he said, I played him so long, I finally became him. And that was basically how I felt. I felt like an actor who put on their shield of armor, their clothes, their whatever, went to work, did my stuff, and there was this, again, and it was all to protect me, because I really felt that if anybody really knew me, forget it. I wouldn't have any friends, and nobody would like me, and no one would want to work with me. And it also helped me, if I am brutally honest, in a weird way, feel one up. That was my way of going out in the world. I kind of kept myself up on a little shelf so that nothing would hurt me. That was my sense of control. I only dated men who I perceived as needing me. I would never date somebody who is already successful and already, because why the hell would they want to date me? I never understood that. They didn't need me. So I didn't have to earn their love. If they didn't need me, then why would they want to love me? And that was just a foreign concept to me. That needing me thing made me feel safe. It made me feel a little superior, and therefore safe again, because I felt that I was the one that was in control. And ironically enough, they became my higher power. As much as I talk about my superior feeling, I made them my higher power. My well-being was based on their need for me and my service to them. That was where my total self-esteem and my self-worth came from. If I was being of service to them and they needed me, that was like it for me. That was love for me. I lost myself in these relationships. And ironically, they lost the woman that they fell in love with, because they fell in love with this woman who put on this great show of being independent and being whatever. And then I became this overbearing, let me help you. You're my higher power in my life and everything. And my life just went out the window. So I got married late in life. So just to finish that, most of my relationships were with active addicts of some kind. I was non-discriminating as to the kind of addict, just as long as they were an addict, so that I could fix them. That was my goal. And if I managed to fix one of them, then good, my job was done. That was it. Then I was on to the next project. And they would be left wondering what the hell happened. But, you know, what happened was the only thing we had in common was the disease. And once that disease was over on their side, I wasn't going to look at my side of it. I just wanted to keep being the same little fixer, little helper, because that's how I got my self-esteem fixed. So I did eventually get married late to a man that I was helping to start a business. I put everything I had into this relationship, financially, emotionally, physically, just everything. All of my dreams and all the money that I saved and all the things that I'd done. I traveled for a software company for many years, and I had hundreds of thousands of miles on frequent flyer miles and hotel vouchers. And I gave them all to him so that he could go on these trips to China and stay in nice hotels and whatever for his, he was a designer, product designer, and we were having, and we started off pretty okay, but it just, they were not good businessmen. So we had a terrible partnership. It was just, you know, so there was an expression about hitching your star onto somebody else's wagon. That was me. And that was also something I was taught. My father was really big on be the supportive woman behind the successful man. And that was my job, was to be that person. So I put everything I had into this relationship, and I became like a gambler. The only way I can describe it is I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop betting on, oh no, the next time it's going to work. The next time it's going to be successful. And, you know, there was always the next time. So when we lost literally everything, our home, our money, our savings, and I finally looked at what I had given up. You know, I asked to end the marriage, which really wasn't a marriage at that point anyway. And to let you know how sick I was, I even paid for the wedding and the honeymoon when we got married. I mean, I was the one that controlled everything. I was going to make it happen. So after the third failure, we lost everything. We ended the marriage. I was broke. I had zero self-esteem because I failed. You know, my idea of what was going to happen, I was the gambler who had just wiped out everything and had nothing to show for it. So I was pretty much homeless, and I was just lost in every way, in every sense of that word. I ended up living in my father's home after he was moved to memory care. I had no one left to blame for my unhappiness because I was now back living alone in somebody else's house, but it was a nice place to be homeless. And I was friggin' miserable. My life was completely unmanageable. I felt tremendously alone and unloved. One day, I found myself on my knees on the kitchen floor, crying out to a God that I had forgotten. I then found myself cleaning. I didn't know what to do. I just was praying, what can I do? I literally thought I had lost my mind. That was the best explanation I could give for it. So as I was getting up off the floor, I put my hand on the counter and I thought, you know, I just need to do something that's going to make me feel like I'm in control of something, that I'm doing something. And for some reason, my hand happened to be over the junk drawer in the kitchen. So I opened the drawer up and I started cleaning it out. And one of the things way back, stuffed in the back of the junk drawer, was a 12-step pamphlet that my mother must have left at one time when she was visiting and staying at that house. And it was like a light bulb went off, like a little beam of light, a little beam of hope came into my heart and my mind. And I thought, oh, you know, I've tried everything else. I've spent tens of thousands of dollars in my life on therapy and seminars. You know, maybe I should give this 12-step thing a chance for me. I had been to 12-step program in my life because of my mom. My mom did eventually get sober. I went to Alateen. I went to Al-Anon for many of the relationships I was involved in, but it was always for the addict. It was always for them because I was the significant other. But I never got that I had any part in this disease. I had no idea that I was the problem. And also society kind of rewards that. You know, it's easy to see that there's a problem with the drunk or the drug addict or whatever, but, you know, society tends to reward the alcoholic, which I also was. And, you know, everybody jokes around about being a control freak. Well, it's not funny. And it's a very lonely way to live life. And not a very authentic way of living life. So when that little beam of hope came into my heart and my head, I thought maybe this could be the answer. This is what I call for me, my first little beam of hope with God. And G-O-D for me stands for, in this instance, gift of desperation. I was so desperate, and the gift of that desperation that's what got my butt in the first meeting to the first meeting. And I was determined. So I think God, for me in that moment, was the gift of desperation. That was from him. That was from my higher power, him and her. My higher powers both. So I started with Al-Anon, which led me to ACA, and I'm not going to go into all this, which led me to CODA. ACA, for those that don't know, is Adult Children of Alcoholics. That's what it started out as. Now it's just Adult Children of Dysfunctional Families, which means that it's open to everybody on the planet. I am, but I was not getting in each one of these. I was so determined through my desperation. I was determined. Now all of my attention was on me, and I am going to fix me, by God. And I thought I had that power to fix me. And then I got depressed again because I wasn't getting a sense of recovery. I felt very stuck. For me, this is just my story. Wow, except when I walked into my first CODA meeting. When I walked in my first CODA meeting, I literally felt like the energy was completely different. And I thought, wow, this is where I put my big girl pants on and learn how to live. And so I just knew right away it was very different. But the other thing is I'm pretty smart. Don't have a lot of education, but I'm pretty smart. And I was determined to figure this recovery thing out. And that's what my poor sponsor had to keep telling me. Figuring it out is not one of the steps. But I kept making it one of my steps. And I really I was still locked into this fixing mode, but now all that attention was on me. And I was pretty harsh on myself, even in recovery. So I bought lots of books, lots and lots of books. I spent my quiet time every morning out on the patio, and I had 5 different morning readings. I had morning affirmation books and whatever, but I had 5 different books that I read something every day, every morning, looking for messages from God, because this higher power thing I was still struggling with, because my higher power was still this, and I didn't even know it, this judgmental God that I had to earn and figure out this love thing. I just didn't get it. So one morning out on the patio, I just couldn't concentrate for some reason. I kept reading the same line over and over and over again in this first book. And I finally closed it and looked at the pile of books, and I shoved them all away and just said, God, I can't do this today. I just can't do it. I'm sorry. And I heard, then just lay back and let me love you. And I literally was like, what? What do you mean? You know, I'm supposed to be reading something. I'm supposed to be doing something. So I did. I just leaned my head back in the chair, and I suddenly became aware a beautiful, soft breeze came and caressed my face and caressed my hair. I felt the warmth of the sun on my skin, again, like a lover's caress. And an amazing bird was right behind me and started singing this incredible song, just incredible. And I started crying, just tears of amazing, because I felt like the love that I was feeling being infused into me was painful. It was painful for me to open my heart up to that love. I had no idea how I'd shut myself off from all this love that was around me. And I really felt loved. It's just a feeling I can't describe. I wish I could. But I felt it like I was swimming in it, like it was inside of me and outside of me. And this was the beginning, really the beginning of my relationship with now I call it my real higher power. Loving. And I always add the word loving, my loving higher power. My old higher power was judging. This one was incredibly loving, more loving than I could comprehend. And that's the other thing, I couldn't figure out this love. I couldn't figure it out if I wanted to. About a year later, I started having breathing problems. And I would go to the doctor and I would tell her what was going on, and she kept telling me there was nothing wrong. And I was gaining weight and nothing had changed. And I couldn't, when I laid down at night, I couldn't breathe. I finally ended up over months sleeping in a lazy boy chair, sitting up. So I had just been to the doctor on Friday, and a friend had invited me to walk the Arizona golf thing on Sunday. Anyway, there was a big golf event, and I walked the whole course, but I knew something was wrong because I was starting to have pains in my chest. But again, I felt it was my breathing and something was wrong with my lungs. So being the good codependent I was, I just waited because I had an appointment with a pulmonologist the next week. And about 11 o'clock that night, every breath, it felt like Arnold Schwarzenegger was squeezing my heart. And I just slowly, again, being me, because I got to put on that good show, I got up. It took me hours to walk to the bathroom, to take a shower, to wash my hair. And just in case I had to go to the hospital, I also got some clothes and stuff out prepared. And I left them on the bed. And I went to the urgent care. And it was shocking to me because I'm just going to try and shorten this up as much as I can. But urgent care took a chest x-ray. They had taken several EKGs. They brought in 3 different people to give me EKGs. And finally, the nurse practitioner came in and said, your heart is this big, like the size of a cow. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she said, you have to go to the emergency room. And again, I got in my car because I was going to have to. She didn't offer to get an ambulance. I got in my car, and instead of going to the hospital, because it was 20-minute drive either way, I went home and called a neighbor and asked her if she would pick me up and take me to the ER, because I didn't want my car there. I wanted to pick up my things that I was going to need at the hospital. These are all the crazy things that I did because I had to be, I don't know, I think it was part of still that looking good thing. Being in control of some kind, it made me feel like I was in control. And I got to the hospital, and the doctor not so, just very whatever. And I was literally blowing up like a balloon in front of everybody. The fluids had backed up so badly in my body. They immediately put me on an IV of something called Lasix to help get rid of all the fluid that was backing up. And he said, yeah, you have congestive heart failure. I was like, what the hell? How the hell could I have congestive heart failure? It was just such a shock. So finally, I can't even describe the shock that I was in. So cardiologist came in about 2 o'clock in the morning and whatever, and just said, what's your history? And it turned out, because of course they would, they thought I was on coke. They thought I had all. I said, no, I'm really boring. He goes, well, boring is good. I said, but I did have breast cancer 17 years ago. And he said, oh, did you have adriamycin, which is the drug they don't even use anymore? And I said, yeah, loads of it. And he said, well, it's a heart killer. And I was so pissed. I was like, I have congestive heart failure. I'm like dying. And it's because of some drug I took for my cancer almost 20 years ago. So now, even though I was doing all this on my own, I will also tell you that I felt a presence. I felt that I was not alone. That's the only way I can put it. That's all I'm going to say. I just did not feel alone. And I kept talking to this presence. And as I walked into the bathroom for the 500th time, because I had to go to the bathroom every 15 minutes because of the fluids, I remember thinking the astronomical odds of what had to happen in my life to get cancer at 40, to have had the protocol back then was something that they don't even do anymore. They just bombarded you with, they gave you, the treatment for everybody was the same. Like you were stage 5, ready to go, no matter what stage cancer you had. And way too much. And it affected everything in my life, in my body. And when I thought of that, and then also just my lifestyle, living on my own, my salt, even though I thought I was doing okay with my lean cuisines, everything was loaded with salt. I had no idea. So it turns out I've just been living, quote unquote, wrong, not knowing what I had. And it came to me. I looked in the mirror and I said, my God, this is God too. This is God. I had been in this little, God is all butterflies and love and sunshine and winning lottery tickets, but this was God too. And that was really hard. And so I just said, stay with me. If this is it, I know you love me. I'm going to choose to believe that you're going to take me through this, whatever it is. And it's not what I want, and I sure as hell don't like it, but I sure as hell can't do it alone. So this was the beginning of my growing up relationship with my higher power. This is when it was like, oh, I had been really pretty much approaching my God as kind of a little kid. I want this and I want that, and I love you and I know you love me, and it's all, but I didn't look at my side of the responsibility of this relationship. So I was told I had a 50-50 chance of living 3 to 5 years without a heart transplant. And I did not want a heart transplant. So my brother and my mother had flown out to be with me at the beginning and to, help me through those first few days. But what was horrible is they had me dead and buried. They heard what the doctor had to say, and they were just like, well, now you're going to teach us how to die. And my mom even saved music from a church service that we had gone to, thinking that we might use it for my funeral mass. So needless to say, they were not great at any kind of emotional or spiritual support. So I just stayed very, very, very close to my higher power and this presence that I felt. I literally heard the message when I was on the table and they had just given me the angiogram and told me, my heart was beautiful and it would have lived to have been 100 years old. It was just that the heart muscle itself had gotten stretched out by the drugs, and there was nothing they could do about that. And I just said, well, thanks a lot, boys. I'm going to see what the evangelists have to say about this. I'm going to let the big guy make the decision. And so that was my attitude. And I heard God say, just do what they tell you to do, but leave the outcome to me. Just leave the outcome to me. And I just kept that to myself. So I had to change my diet. I had to change my lifestyle because I thought it was this is another thing I was probably taught or came into this world with. What a pain in the ass to take care of myself. What a pain in the ass. And so I had to learn how to shop. And every time I walked into the store, especially Safeway, the first thing I would see is potato chips and all kinds of soups. And the teen in my head would say, well, I can't have this, I can't have that. And that's all it said. All the things that I could, was just what I couldn't have. So I just kept going through because basically it was simple. I just had to, everything had to be fresh meat, fresh vegetables, nothing processed. And it meant I had to cook for myself, which I didn't want to do because I loved living on cheese and crackers and lean cuisines. So this is what I mean about the growing up part. So I went shopping, I did my cooking, and I went to physical rehab. Yes, I was the youngest one there. I was there with all the 80-year-olds, and my teen was pissed about that too. Here I am with all the old people, complaining. So I had to learn to focus my attention on taking care of me 24/7, 7 days a week. And I did. I became my project. And I did it bitching. And I bitched to God, even while I was chopping up my vegetables, even while I was cooking my meals. And it was like the little crabby 2-year-old who's like, I want to do that, and I don't want to do this, and I hate you. And, the mom saying, I know. Yeah, that's okay. Just keep doing it. So that's how God loved me through that. Just keep doing it. That's okay. I can take the complaining. I can take your bitching. I can take your. And my favorite prayer at the time when I had on my refrigerator was, I don't like this. I'm in a lot of pain. And I'm choosing to trust you. I'm going to choose to trust you to carry me through all the way to the other side of this, whatever that is. And I had to say that to myself several times a day, and that's why I put it on the refrigerator. Every time I had to open that refrigerator and cook something and make something and plan something, I didn't like it for a long time. It probably took me a good 6 months, if I was honest, maybe even 9, before I finally got into a situation where, ironically enough, food preparation is now a meditation for me. I do it with God, just like I was doing it then, even while I was bitching and complaining. So after several weeks of this, at first, my blood work, I was going every 2 weeks to see the doctor, was really not changing that much. And so one morning, my mother was still there. I was praying in my quiet time, for God to heal me. And I heard this, nope, this is too big for you. I was like, what? What do you mean? What do you mean you're not going to answer my prayer? And it wasn't that he was going to answer my prayer, but what came to me, it was very specific, is you have to go through all of your contacts and send an email to them, to anyone that you think would want to know if you passed away. And you have to let them know what's happening. And I literally said out loud, well, you might as well ask me to take naked pictures of myself and send them to everybody, because that's how I felt. I said, are you insane? So that's my brain. My brain was screaming, no. So I got up from my meditation, from my prayers, and I went immediately to my computer, because I knew that if I didn't obey that right away, my brain was going to talk me out of it. So I listened to my heart, I listened to God, and I did. I sent a very simple email to friends and family that I loved and just wanted them to know it was happening and that I was so grateful. for my love for them and that, and their relationships. And then I went out to the patio and told my mom she was going home because that was the other message I got. And I had blood work done every 2 weeks, so it was really 9 days. So 9 days later, I had my blood work done. In the meantime, emails and cards and flowers, my house looked like a funeral parlor, came pouring in from friends and family and everybody just sending me this tsunami of love. And it was it was so painful to receive. So painful. And I could feel that my heart was expanding. And it kept opening my heart. Every time I got another one, my heart would open up a little bit more. And I realized how hard it was for me to receive. And I had to ask God to help me. Please help me learn to receive. I became aware that somewhere in my life's journey, I had closed my heart to receiving love. It hurt just too much. So while I was receiving these wonderful letters and cards and flowers, I had to get my blood work done, and I went back a few days after I got the blood work done. And my blood work, my doctor was flabbergasted. He almost accused me of having somebody else go give their blood in my place, because everything was normal. Everything was normal. For anybody who's in the medical, just to let you know, my ejection fraction, which measures how functioning your heart is, was barely 20. Barely 20. My liver, everything was off, because when your heart doesn't function, everything goes off. 15 is you're going to die if you don't get a heart transplant like right now. So that's where I had been. When I went to see my doctor, my blood work was normal and he couldn't understand it. And I said, well, what does that mean? Goody, goody, my blood work's normal. What does that mean? And he said, it means your heart can get better. Your heart can heal. And he said, I just don't understand it. So 60 days later, and I won't bore you with the details, when I went through my rehab, they were all mad at me, and they sent me to their social worker twice, because I kept telling them that my goal was to walk this 2-mile hike at Spur Cross that I loved up in Cave Creek. And they told me my goal was to be able to walk twice a day for 15 minutes. And that was more realistic. And I said, nope, if you're not going to get on board with me, then please ask somebody else to work with me. So it was really fascinating. So 60 days later, my ejection fraction was 38%, so it had almost doubled in functionality. And I didn't need a pacemaker or a defibrillator, which I was told I was absolutely going to have. And 6 months, and I also, by the way, at that level, walked my 2-mile hike in Spur Cross with my brother when he came out with his kids for spring break. And 6 months later, it improved again. And a year later, I was at 50% ejection fraction, which is the low end of normal. So I am a living miracle. My heart has been completely restored to functionality. I continue to use this experience as a touchstone because I'm very human, and I'll forget when something happens and the shit hits the fan again, and I'll be looking for God for that next miracle. What have you done for me lately? When that self-pity creeps in, holy shit, it's a hard thing to get out of. So I use this as my touchstone. I use gratitude as my guide to help me see the miracles in every day. My hearing, my eyesight, my mobility. I'm almost 64 years old, and I have so many friends that have lost a lot of these things. Speaking of loss, I've lost 2 sisters to this disease of codependence. One sister OD'd, and the other one is lost to mental illness. So that's why I go to meetings. That's why I work with my sponsor. That's why I hang out with my recovery friends. And that's why I talk to God all the time. And as one of my friends reminded me at the beginning of this meeting, I snuggle with God before I go to bed at night. And when I wake up in the morning, I have what's called my God body pillow. And I know that I am loved. And I snuggle with my little girl and my teen, with my higher power, together every night and every morning, because that's how I want to start my day, and that's how I want to go to sleep at night. And that's what makes me feel safe, and that's what makes me feel loved. So the key was for me is my relationship with my higher power is to always be honest, always be authentic, whether I'm pissed off, whether I'm joyful, whether I'm sad, whether I'm in pain. I share everything with my higher power, and I listen, and I wait. So first of all, we all have a higher power. Everybody has a higher power. We just might not be talking to them. And I know it sounds a little schizophrenic, but for me, and I've heard this again, for everybody it's different. For me, it's not my voice. I know it's not a human being. So I don't want you to, I know it's not coming from, but for me, it's and for some reason, don't ask me why, it always comes from like behind. And, but it's gentle, it's loving, but it's so specific. I don't know how to describe it. The other thing that happened to me, and I'll just share this quickly, I have a housemate. They were going off to a very important business meeting that was about a very long drive, over an hour away. And they had been working on a presentation until the wee hours of the morning. And as they were rushing past me to leave, I got this clear message. He doesn't have something that he thinks he has that's really important. Well, I was busy. I was working on my computer, but I said, do you have everything that you need? Because I'm hearing that you don't have something that you really need. And then he said, hey, I've got everything I need. I'm running late. And then it came to me again that I heard stick. And he had his presentation on a memory stick. And I said, do you have your memory stick? And he said, yes, I have my memory stick. It's been down here in his briefcase. And that was the last thing I heard. The next thing I see him running back up the stairs. Well, he had his memory stick in his briefcase. He forgot to download it off of his computer onto the memory stick. So it was just, those are the kinds of things that just, it's people call it intuition. I'm sure you've had moments of intuition. I don't know how to describe that, but these messages for me were thoughts. I guess that's the best way to describe it. It's like a thought that I know came from somewhere else. And for me, they've been subtle and they've been really specific. But I guess that's how I describe it. A lot of it is like, I would describe it almost as like super intense intuition. I call it the gift of desperation, G-O-D. So that was my first kind of kick in the butt, if you will. But it was gentle. It wasn't a kick in the butt, but it was definitely like waving a flag, like here it is. there is help out here. But I needed that desperation. That's the gift of desperation. I've tried everything else and it's way too big for me. It's just way, way, way too big for me. I can't do it. I can't do it by myself. And that was a very hard thing, a painful thing for me to accept. And I thought I was my own higher power and that I could control things. So yeah, gift of desperation. It's awesome. But there are big periods when I don't feel anything. So that's where I do have to use my mind. That's why I wrote that prayer on the refrigerator, because my side of it is I choose. That's my action. My action, and some days that was the only action I could take. Today I choose to trust you. Today I choose to know that you love me, even though this feels like shit. And even though I'm in pain, and even though I don't like this. It sucks. But I choose to trust you and know that you're there, even though I don't feel you. Because I know. And that's where the mind-body-spirit connection comes in. because I don't always feel it. People talk about feeling it in your heart. For me, I don't always feel that. So I count on, that's why I have certain go-to prayers like that one, that is just like, yeah, and I have that honesty of, I don't feel you today. But you know what? The other thing that I focus on when I don't have that feeling is gratitude. I can get in touch with my gratitude pretty quickly because I've had losses, as most of us have, and I have so many friends who've had losses that don't have their vision, don't have their hearing, don't have their mobility, and I do have all those things. So I start with some simple things, what seem to be simple, but trust me, they're miracles. I'm so grateful that I have them. So when I can't feel that, that love, the vibration that I get from the feeling of gratitude always gets me close. That's all I can say. It gets me close. When I get into that, well, I call it the squirrels running around in my head, because my brain is running the show. My brain is trying to figure it out. And I don't get to figure it out. That was the hardest. That's probably what I spent the first several years in recovery. I was so desperate to figure it out, and I was constantly asking the question, why? I've had sponsees with the same problem. We're human. And especially for those of us that have, a high, need for control, and that our knowledge makes us feel safe, that's where I would go. I call it, just all my energy would go up into my head, and that's where I would feel safe. And I had to work hard. I hate that term, working hard. I didn't have to work hard. I just had to be aware. Let's just put it that way. I just had to be aware and honest with myself. Where is my energy? Is my energy up in my head, and I'm giving all my power away to my head? That was one of the things I want to talk about. So I'm grateful that for your question. My mind, I thought my mind ran my life. Today, I run my mind. My thoughts are my thoughts, and they come from, my thoughts used to be another higher power of mine. They would just willy-nilly fly around, and whatever my thoughts were, I gave them all the power. Well, no. I have a heart and I have a spirit, and I'm in charge of my thoughts. So when I was working the steps, that became a big thing for me, in 3 I choose. I choose to believe. And number 2, I come to believe. It's a coming. It's not like a gong, like you said, a gong on the head. Wouldn't that be nice? Here's the magic pill. But I got to be honest with you, it's still daily for me. It's sometimes it's moment to moment. I've had a lot of really crappy things happen recently, and that's life happens. And I heard somebody else say recently, and it's actually in something that I read, but life is meant to be hard. Why is life so hard? Well, life is meant to be hard, and I truly believe that life is meant to be hard so that I have to lean on a higher power. And I don't get to, I've got a whole list of whys, and I plan on taking with me when I go, because I'm not going to get the answers until the other side. But I don't get to know. It sucks. But that's the way it is. And it's different because I too got my hand slapped from the nuns when I asked why. Why? And it just, that is the way it is. Well, no, I didn't like that. So I choose to believe my higher power is just pure love. I've had brief experiences with that. It's been amazing. But like I've heard other people say, I do believe that if you just keep at it, just keep going to meetings, just keep working on the steps. I love what somebody said. They said, because they were having, when will I hear from my higher power? It's like, they'll be in touch. But we have to let go of this. So if you notice that, for me, what I do is I try to consciously move my energy from my head down into my heart, because my heart always knows. My heart always knows the right answer. But my head really freaks out and wants control. And that's where I get in trouble. So as soon as I find myself trying to figure something out, I let go. I move my energy back down into my heart. The voice made me realize that I wasn't receiving. But I had had a lot of experiences with knowing that, God loved me. There were just too many things that happened in our family, too many miracles, if you will. So I knew that there had to be something bigger than me. I just didn't know where I fit in that relationship. I just didn't understand that relationship. And it never dawned on me to be just brutally honest in my well, it's a relationship, just like, why would the most important relationship in my life, how would I expect that to be real if I wasn't honest? That's not a relationship. If I just pretend everything's wonderful and I love you and that's not real. Exactly. I got to say, this sucks. I don't understand. I don't. And actually, you know what, Carol? I would ask them. I would ask your higher power. Help me. I'm struggling with this. I did go through a period where I did, because I was just like, I didn't get it. Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing. My brain, I didn't realize that my brain was like this giant addict, and it wouldn't stop. And so that was a gift. So I don't get to like or understand probably most of what happens. Yeah. And I won't have any serenity if I keep thinking that I'm the one that has to get it and understand it. That's where my trust in God, that's what faith is. It's just like, this sucks. I don't get to get it. But, there are some things that I know I will not know until I die. I mean, I will never know the answer, and I don't like it, but it is what it is. And that's why God's God. But also, on the other side of it, we're talking about all the negative, but, I also use God as the God of delight, because if my life was left to me and what I could think of and what I could dream of, boy, my life would be very limited. And, God has something way bigger in store for me than I could ever, ever, ever imagine in a million years, and probably couldn't imagine. So those are the things about God surprising me. The solutions that God comes up with always surprise me. And what cracks me up is he's got, in my opinion, my God's got a wicked sense of humor, because he loves to use people that I really do not want him to use. And, but no, it's like, I'm living with my ex-husband because of my housing situation. Now, when that first came up for me, you think I wanted to live with my ex-husband? That's why we're exes. But it has been a very healing, amazing experience for both of us to be housemates again. But it's, and because of my recovery, I get to get my PhD in my recovery because I have to practice these principles in all of my affairs. And I get to practice these principles. I don't have to. I like to change that language. That's another thing I'm working on, is changing have to get to. I get to work my recovery every day. And it's not easy, and I make mistakes, and I'm going to make mistakes. I'm human. But yeah, that was a big one for me. Are you effing kidding me? I can't, this is not the answer I wanted. And, but he was the only one. And so I can now sit back and say, yeah, it's taught me a lot, and it's been good. But it's, but no, at the beginning. So that's one of the ones that I do get to see, which is, and thank God we get those. Thank goodness we get those, because they do give us hope. They do give us touchstones to get through the next thing. But sometimes, especially in death, we just don't get to know. And, bad and disease. Why did I get breast cancer? I don't know. Lousy gene pool. Why did I get the chemo treatment I got? I don't know. Who knows? But I'm sure it was all weaved together, in some weird, giant, complicated way that I'll never understand in this life. And that's where my trust comes in. And that's where my choice comes in. Because I can tell you, when I'm not in God's will, oh yeah, I definitely hear something. And I don't always hear something. Sometimes it's a feeling. I call it the sandpaper feeling. Like in the middle of my gut, kind of this, this isn't right. And you can call it intuition. You can call it that gut feeling, but I usually just get that. I just call it the sandpaper feeling. It's when I'm not in God's will. So that's kind of pretty much how I live. I'm assuming that I'm in your will until I hear otherwise. And that's how I got through my breast cancer, by the way. I was just, because I my dad made this huge donation to this whatever Christian thing, and I got a letter from the Mother Superior saying that we got this donation and we have these masses for you, but we want you to know that we're not praying for you to get better, to be healed. We're praying for you to accept God's will. Well, I was so pissed. I was like, God, I would have preferred the money. So I remember taking the envelope and holding it up and just saying, well, I'm going to assume that we're on the same page until I hear otherwise. And then just do some writing on it, because it's okay. When I first came into CODA, I didn't think I had any feelings. I felt that I thought I was just totally numbed out. And lo and behold, I come to find out that my feelings were running my entire life. And I had just been denying that I had them. And I can tell you that through the work that I did over time, I'm now in control of my thoughts. I know, let's just put it that way. Do I do it, perfectly? No, there's no such thing. It's progress, not perfection. But I am in charge of my feelings. My feelings aren't in charge of me. I am in charge of my thoughts. My thoughts are not in charge of me. So that's the difference, to be honest with you, for me, of recovery versus non-recovery. In recovery, I'm totally a slave to my feelings. Out of recovery, I'm totally a slave to my feelings and whatever my mind decides to come up with. And usually it's scary shit. Just my mind because of the way it was programmed, it just loves to scare the hell out of me. Like there's a fire hose that's been pouring love on me my entire life. I just had no idea. Just totally ignoring it. I'm just holding some giant umbrella trying to, stave off all that love, which is, my codependence and the programming that I had, especially religious, I call it religious abuse, spiritual abuse, which a lot of us had. So feelings are very important to get in touch with. So that I can even know what they are. I can't know what they are, I can't do anything until I know what they are. And I was so bad, I had to actually write down like 7 feelings and check in with myself, do I have these feelings? And if so, what are they on? So that's what the thing about meditation for me, and if we, do a little bit of it, it's also to get in touch with my body. Because my body is the instrument that God gave me to feel and to notice. But I was a talking head most of my life. I didn't feel anything from my neck down. I just was up in my head all the time. So I would just recommend that you notice the resistance that you have. Give yourself permission to have that resistance. I have to be gentle with me. Even without that connection, it starts with that. And as I relax and become calm, and I listen to my body, I listen to my breathing, and notice the resistance and where is that coming from, and it's usually fear, and it's not real because fear's up here, and I'm telling myself a story about something. So, but seriously, for me, it was a process of it was working the steps. And even when I got to step 2, trust me, when I was doing my steps the first time, I still had my old higher power. I thought I had a higher power. It was just through the process of going to meetings and working it over and over again that I started to have this evolution of the relationship. So yeah, I wish it was a gong on the head or a pill or a magic. And so for some people, I guess it can be. That's why it's so different for every human being. We each have a higher power of our own understanding, and we don't get to understand it, which cracks me up. Of our own understanding, I don't understand God, but I have a better relationship today than I ever had before. But I have a better relationship with myself than I ever had before. So sometimes it starts with me. What happened for me, it's a kind of creeping open the door. But I had to get rid of my old higher power. I will tell you, for me, that was huge. And that was hard because it was so ingrained in my head. So it's a process. But mainly my sponsor gave me kind of what I call my litmus test. When I have a problem that I have to deal with, and I just don't see a solution and it's too big for me to handle, she'll say, let God surprise you. And the first time I heard her say that, I was like, no, don't, don't tempt God. And she just laughed and said, wrong higher power. And I was like, oh yeah. So that's still, I can still go there. I mean, it's very easy because that's the way my brain worked for over 50 years. And so I have to be reminded of my loving higher power. And that's why repetition is so important for me. So yes, it was actually all the programs, the work in the higher power. But for me, my personal journey, I would say that my relationship in CODA is when I got the grown-up part of the relationship. That's when my teen had to kind of let go because she thought she ran the roost and she wasn't too happy about this God thing. And that was when I had to say, no, this is a different God. This is our loving God. This is our true higher power that loves us. And, we're not going to live that old way anymore. We're going to live trusting, choosing to trust this new higher power. And that was the hardest part for me and that's what CODA helped me with the most. And I did have counseling, during that time too, that helped me. But, between sponsorship, counseling, and the meetings, and hearing other people share about their relationships with their higher power and how individual and personal they were, I was like, oh, I had a hunger for that, but I just didn't get it. And I also and at the beginning, I thought it was this, as I said, and it's wonderful. There's a lot of people refer to it as like the pink cloud or whatever, but but then I realized that I had to grow up in my relationship with God too. And that's probably where CODA came in, to be honest with you. CODA's put my big girl pants on, as I was saying, and do the work, do the steps. I kept waiting for God to do something. And when he told me to send that email out, I was like, oh my God, is there somebody else up there that I can talk to? Because I sure don't want to do that. And so is there another higher power I can talk to? So no, it's a very personal, individual relationship. And it's like, nope, I'm it, kid. So yeah, it's an ongoing process. It always will be. And I do need to be reminded on occasion about not to focus on my old higher power. We are all living miracles, you guys. I know that. And that's why I need you to remind me of the miracles that we are. So with that, I'm going to close. Thank you so much.